The ship that carried Marcus Cole through the darkness of space was small. It was old. It had no weapons, no shields, and no escort. The United Earth Council had sent him alone because sending a fleet would have meant war. And war against the Vethkai Dominion meant death for every human being alive. Marcus stood at the window of his tiny cabin and watched the stars slip past. He was 43 years old. His hair was gray at the temples. His hands were steady, but his heart beat fast in his chest. In 6 hours, he would stand before the most powerful beings in the known galaxy. He would speak for 8 billion humans who had no idea that their extinction had already been decided. The message had come 3 months ago. A Dominion probe had entered Earth's solar system, scanned everything, and transmitted its findings back to the convergence chamber. 2 weeks later, Earth received a single transmission. The words were simple and terrible. The species known as humanity has been judged. You are too violent. You are too unpredictable. You are too dangerous. You will not be permitted to spread beyond your star. A cleansing fleet has been dispatched. You have 90 cycles to prepare your affairs. 90 cycles? About 100 Earth days. That was how long humanity had left to exist. The governments of Earth had panicked. Some wanted to fight. Some wanted to hide. Some wanted to pray. But Marcus had done something different. He had gone to the old places. The forgotten places. The sites that governments had kept secret for decades. And there, in the dust and darkness of ancient ruins that should not have existed on Earth, he had found the truth about what humanity really was. Now he carried that truth with him, written on his skin and burned into his memory. It was the only weapon he had. He hoped it would be enough. The Dominion station appeared in the window like a metal flower blooming in space. It was vast beyond imagination. 1,000 kilometers wide, home to millions of beings from dozens of species. At its center sat the convergence chamber, where the 47-member races met to decide the fate of lesser civilizations. Marcus had studied everything humanity knew about the Dominion. It was not much. The Vethkai were insects, cold and logical, masters of genetic engineering. The Kreth were reptiles, ancient and patient, builders of the greatest warships in the galaxy. The Marhavi were living crystals who communicated through vibration and light. There were 44 other species, each strange, each powerful, each convinced that humanity was a disease that needed to be cut out before it could spread. His ship docked with a soft clang. Marcus took a deep breath. He looked at himself in the small mirror beside his bed. He wore the simple gray uniform of an Earth diplomat. No medals, no decorations. Nothing that might seem threatening. He looked tired. He looked afraid. He looked exactly like what the Dominion expected a human to look. Weak and small and alone. Good. The airlock opened with a hiss. 2 Vethkai guards waited for him. They were tall, nearly 3 meters, with hard shells of blue-black chitin and eyes that reflected the light like broken glass. Their weapons were aimed at his chest. Human, one of them clicked. You will follow. Marcus followed. The corridors of the station were built for beings much larger than humans. Marcus felt like a child walking through a giant's castle. The walls were covered with symbols and images he did not understand. The air smelled strange, chemical, wrong. But he kept walking. He kept his eyes forward. He kept his hands visible and empty. Other beings passed him in the corridors. Some stopped to stare. A group of Kreth diplomats, their scales green and gold, watched him with cold yellow eyes. A Moravi delegation floated past, their crystal bodies chiming softly as they moved. Everywhere he looked, Marcus saw contempt, curiosity, fear. Yes, fear. Even here, in the heart of their power, they were afraid of what humanity might become. That fear was why they had voted for extermination. Better to kill the humans now, while they were still trapped on one small planet, than wait and see what they might do with 1,000 worlds. The guards led him through a massive doorway and into the convergence chamber itself. Marcus had seen images. He had studied the records, but nothing had prepared him for the reality. The chamber was enormous, a sphere carved from living rock and filled with light. Tiers of seats rose up in every direction, each one holding delegates from the 47 species. Thousands of beings, maybe tens of thousands, all gathered to witness the execution of humanity's last hope. At the center of the chamber was a platform. It was empty except for a single circle marked on the floor. That was where Marcus was meant to stand. That was where he would speak. That was where he would live or die. He walked to the circle. He stood in its center. He looked up at the assembled might of the Dominion and felt the weight of 1,000 weapons targeting his body. The High Arbiter of the Vethkai rose from its throne. It was ancient, its shell cracked and gray with age, but its eyes were sharp and cold. When it spoke, its voice echoed through the chamber like thunder. Human, you have requested this audience. You have traveled alone into the heart of your enemy's territory. You have placed yourself at our mercy. The Arbiter's mandibles clicked together. Speak. Tell us why we should not end your species today. Marcus looked at the Arbiter. He looked at the weapons. He looked at the thousands of beings who wanted him dead. And then he smiled. I am Commander Marcus Cole, he said. His voice was calm. His voice was clear. His voice carried to every corner of the chamber. I speak for humanity. I did not come here to beg for mercy. I did not come here to plead for time. I came here to show you something. The Arbiter's antennae twitched. Show us what, human? The truth, Marcus said. The truth about what we are. The truth about where we came from. The truth about what you are about to do. He reached for the collar of his uniform. 1,000 weapons hummed. 1,000 fingers tightened on triggers. The air itself seemed to hold its breath. Move slowly, human, the Arbiter warned. Any sudden motion will be your last. Marcus moved slowly. He unsealed his jacket. He pulled aside his undershirt. And there, over his heart, he revealed the mark. It was a tattoo. Black ink on pale skin. A circle containing geometric patterns of impossible complexity. At its center was a small blue sphere, perfect and bright. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the screaming began. A Creth diplomat in the third tier made a sound, like breaking glass, and collapsed. A delegation of Mojave began vibrating so violently that their translation devices shattered. Somewhere in the upper tiers, a species Marcus did not recognize began to pray in a language older than stars. The High Arbiter stared at Marcus. Its ancient eyes were wide. Its mandibles hung open. For the first time in its long life, it felt something it had never expected to feel. Terror. That symbol, the Arbiter whispered. You cannot bear that symbol. It is forbidden. It is sacred. It belongs to those who came before. Marcus kept his hand over the mark. He kept his eyes on the Arbiter. He kept smiling. It belongs to humanity, he said. It has always belonged to us. And now you understand why we are not afraid. The weapons were still aimed at him, but no one fired. No one could fire, because every being in that chamber had been raised on stories of the first walkers, the ancient ones who had seeded the galaxy with life. Every child of the Dominion had learned to recognize their sacred symbol. And now that symbol was staring back at them from the skin of a human. The chaos in the convergence chamber lasted for 7 minutes. 7 minutes of screaming, praying, and confusion. 7 minutes of beings who had ruled the galaxy suddenly discovering that everything they believed was wrong. Marcus stood in the center of it all, his hand still pressed over the mark on his chest. He did not move. He did not speak. He simply waited. He had waited his whole life for this moment. He could wait a little longer. The High Arbiter was the first to recover. The ancient Vethkai raised its forelimbs and struck them together with a crack like thunder. The sound echoed through the chamber, cutting through the noise, demanding silence. Slowly, painfully, order returned. "Guards," the Arbiter said. Its voice was steady, but Marcus could see the tremor in its antennae. "Lower your weapons." "High Arbiter," one of the guards protested. "This could be a trick. The humans are known for deception. This mark could be—" I said, "Lower your weapons." The guards obeyed. Around the chamber, other weapon systems powered down. Not because anyone ordered them to, but because the automated targeting computers had recognized the symbol. They had been programmed 2 billion years ago to never harm a being who bore that mark. That programming still held. The Arbiter descended from its throne, its old joints clicking with each step. It approached Marcus slowly, carefully, like a priest approaching a holy relic. When it stood before him, it lowered its massive head until its compound eyes were level with the mark. "The geometry is correct," the Arbiter said softly. "Every angle, every proportion. This is not a copy. This is not a forgery. This is the true symbol of the first walkers." "Yes," Marcus said. "How is this possible? Your species is young. You have existed for less than 1,000,000 years. The first walkers disappeared 2 billion years before your ancestors crawled from the oceans of your world." Marcus lowered his hand and let the mark speak for itself. "May I tell you a story, High Arbiter? A story that humanity has only recently remembered?" The Arbiter stepped back. It looked at the assembled delegates, at the thousands of beings who had come to witness humanity's condemnation. They were silent now. They were waiting. They were afraid. "Speak," the Arbiter said. Marcus took a breath. He had practiced this speech 1,000 times. He had practiced it in the ruins beneath the pyramids of Egypt. He had practiced it in the caves of Lascaux. He had practiced it in the hidden chambers of Antarctica, where ancient machines still hummed with power. Now he would speak it for real, and the fate of his species would depend on every word. 2 billion years ago, he began, the first walkers ruled this galaxy. You know this. Every species in the Dominion knows this. They were the greatest civilization that ever existed. They built wonders that we still cannot understand. They seeded life on 1,000,000 worlds. They watched over the young species that grew from that life. He paused. The chamber was so silent that he could hear his own heartbeat. But the first walkers were not gods. They were mortal. They were curious. They were restless. After billions of years of existence, they grew tired of being what they were. They had learned everything. They had built everything. They had experienced everything. And so they decided to do something new. Marcus began to walk, slowly circling the platform, letting his words reach every corner of the chamber. They decided to forget. A murmur ran through the crowd. The Arbiter's antennae twitched. They used their technology to lock away their memories, their knowledge, their power. They reduced themselves to simple creatures, little more than animals. And then they seated themselves on a small blue world at the edge of the galaxy, where they could start again, where they could experience the wonder of discovery, the joy of learning, the thrill of growth, where they could be young again. Marcus stopped. He faced the Arbiter directly. That world was Earth. Those creatures were the first humans. We are not just humanity. We are the children of the first walkers. We are the first walkers reborn. The silence that followed was absolute. Marcus could see minds struggling to process what he had said. For 2 billion years, every species in the galaxy had grown up in the shadow of the first walkers. They had worshipped their memory. They had studied their ruins. They had built their civilizations on the foundations, The first walkers had left behind Dot, and now they were being told that the first walkers had never left at all. They had simply changed. They had become human. A Creth delegate rose from its seat. It was old. Its scales faded to dull bronze, but its voice was strong. This is madness. This is deception. The first walkers were beings of infinite wisdom. They built the stargates. They engineered the great nebulae. They created life itself. And you expect us to believe they became you? A species that still fights wars over resources? A species that pollutes its own world? A species that cannot even agree on a single government? Yes, Marcus said simply. That is exactly what I expect you to believe. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small device. It was ancient, clearly not of human manufacture, covered in the same geometric patterns as the mark on his chest. He pressed a button, and light filled the chamber. The light formed images. Images of ruins hidden beneath Earth's surface. Images of machines that humanity had only recently learned to activate. Images of genetic sequences, billions of years old, locked inside human DNA, like a library waiting to be opened. We did not know, Marcus said, his voice heavy with the weight of revelation. For 1,000,000 years, we did not know what we were. The memory locks were too strong. We lived as primitives, as children, as exactly what the first walkers intended us to be. But 50 years ago, we found the first ruins. 20 years ago, we decoded the first messages. And 3 months ago, when your probe arrived and announced our extinction, the final locks began to open. He turned off the device. The images faded. The chamber felt dark. We are waking up, Marcus said into the darkness. Slowly, carefully, the first walkers designed it this way. They did not want to remember everything at once. They wanted to grow into their power, to earn it, to deserve it. But we are waking up, and we remember the covenant. The lights returned. The arbiter stood frozen, unable to speak. The covenant, Marcus continued. The promise that the first walkers left on 10,000 worlds. The same message, in the same language, carved into monoliths that have stood for 2 billion years. Do you remember the words, High Arbiter? The Arbiter's voice was barely a whisper. When the marked ones come, you will know them by their sigil. They are our children, our inheritors, our voice. What you do to them, you do to us. And we will return, Marcus finished. That is the covenant. That is the promise. And you, High Arbiter, have sent a fleet to break that promise. The Arbiter staggered backward. For a moment, Marcus thought it might fall. The fleet, the Arbiter gasped. The cleansing fleet. It reaches Earth in 60 cycles. 57, Marcus corrected. 57 days until your ships arrive at my homeworld. 57 days until you attempt to destroy the inheritors of the first walkers. 57 days until you violate a covenant that has stood for 2 billion years. He stepped forward, and the most powerful being in the Dominion stepped back. I did not come here to beg, Marcus said. I came here to warn you. Call back your fleet. Cancel the extermination. Let humanity take its place among the stars. Or face the consequences of breaking faith with those who created you. The Arbiter looked at the mark on Marcus's chest. It looked at the device in his hand. It looked at the thousands of delegates who sat in stunned silence. And for the first time in its ancient life, the High Arbiter of the Vethkai Dominion did not know what to do. The Convergence Chamber had been designed to hold debates that lasted for years. It had water systems for the aquatic species. It had atmospheric controls for the methane breathers. It had meditation chambers for the silicon minds that thought in decades rather than seconds. The builders had prepared for everything. They had not prepared for this. The Arbiter called for a recess. The delegates fled to their private chambers, their communication devices burning with messages to their homeworlds. Within hours, every government in the Dominion would know what had happened. Within days, every being in the galaxy would hear the news. The first walkers had returned. And they were human. Marcus was given quarters in the diplomatic section of the station. They were not comfortable. They were not meant to be. The Dominion had never expected a human diplomat, so they had simply cleared out a storage room and installed a basic life support system. Marcus did not complain. He had slept in worse places. He lay on the hard bed and stared at the ceiling. His body was tired, but his mind would not rest. He kept thinking about what would happen next. The Arbiter had not agreed to anything. The fleet was still coming. The vote for extermination had not been cancelled. He had bought time, nothing more. But time was valuable. Time was everything. A chime sounded at his door. Marcus sat up. He had not expected visitors. "Enter," he said. The door slid open. A being he had never seen before floated into the room. It was small, barely a meter tall, with a body like a jellyfish made of silver light. It pulsed gently as it moved, and where it passed, the air smelled of electricity and age. "Commander Cole," the being said. Its voice came from everywhere and nowhere. "I am Lumineth. I speak for the archivists of the Outer Rim. May I enter?" Marcus gestured to the empty space before him. "You're already inside. Please, sit. Or float. Whatever is comfortable." Lumineth drifted closer. Its light flickered in patterns that might have been laughter. "I have studied your species," it said. "Since the probe returned its data, I have done nothing else. Your history, your biology, your culture, your wars." The patterns shifted. "So many wars." "Yes," Marcus said. "We are not proud of everything we have done. No species is. The Kreth burned 3 worlds before they learned peace. The Vethkai engineered plagues that killed billions of their own kind. The Moravi shattered 2 moons in their civil conflicts. Violence is not unique to humanity. It is the disease of youth." Marcus nodded slowly. "Then, why vote for our extinction? If violence is common among young species, why single us out?" Lumineth's light dimmed for a moment. When it spoke again, its voice was heavy. "Fear. The Dominion has grown old. It has grown comfortable. For 1 billion years, there has been peace. For 1 billion years, no new species has risen to challenge the established order. And then your probe reached beyond your star. Your ships began to explore. Your scientists began to ask questions that we stopped asking long ago. The silver light pulsed brighter. The Dominion saw your potential. It saw how fast you learn, how quickly you adapt, how fiercely you fight. It saw that in 1,000 years, you would be our equals. In 10,000 years, our superiors. And it was afraid." Marcus understood. He had seen the same fear on Earth in the eyes of old empires watching young nations rise. The fear of being replaced. The fear of becoming irrelevant. The fear of the future. "So they decided to kill us before we could grow," he said. "Yes, it was easier than facing the truth. Easier than admitting that the galaxy would change. Easier than accepting that new children might surpass the old." Lumineth drifted closer. Its light touched Marcus's chest, passed through his clothing, and illuminated the mark on his skin. "But they did not know," the archivist said softly. "None of us knew. We thought the first walkers were gone. We thought they had ascended to some higher plane of existence, or traveled to another galaxy, or simply faded away. We never imagined they would choose to begin again. To become small. To become mortal. To become you." Marcus looked at the light playing over his mark. "We didn't know either. For most of our history, we were just another struggling species on a small planet. We had no idea what we carried inside us. And now that you know, what will you do with this power?" It was the question Marcus had been asking himself since the day he first entered the ruins beneath the Sahara. Since the day the ancient machines had scanned his DNA and found the locks hidden within. Since the day the first Walker technology had recognized him as one of its own and begun to share its secrets. "I don't know," he admitted. "The memories are still returning. The knowledge is still unfolding. I can feel it inside me, like a door slowly opening into a room full of light. But I cannot see everything yet. I am still incomplete." Lumineth pulsed gently. "That is wise. The first Walkers did not design the locks to open all at once. They knew that too much power, given too quickly, destroys those who receive it. They wanted their reborn selves to grow into their inheritance. But we may not have time to grow," Marcus said. "The fleet comes in 57 days. If the Dominion does not recall it, my people will die before we can become what we were meant to be." "Perhaps," Lumineth said. "Or perhaps not. The Covenant is clear. The Dominion knows the words. Every species in this chamber learned them as children, carved them into their monuments, whispered them in their prayers. To break that covenant would be to betray everything they believe." "But they don't believe us," Marcus said. "The Kreth delegate called me a liar. Others think this is a trick, a deception, a desperate human ploy to survive. How do I convince them that the truth is the truth?" Lumineth's light dimmed again. When it spoke, its voice was sad. "You cannot convince those who have already decided not to believe. No evidence will satisfy them. No proof will change their minds. They have chosen fear over faith, and fear is stronger than logic." Marcus felt the weight of those words settle on his shoulders. He had hoped that showing the mark would be enough. He had hoped that the ancient technology would speak for itself. But politics was the same everywhere, even among the stars. People believed what they wanted to believe, and no amount of truth could change that. "Then what do I do?" he asked. Lumineth drifted back toward the door. Its light began to fade as it prepared to leave. "You cannot change the minds of those who refuse to see," it said. "But you can show them something they cannot ignore. You can demonstrate what it means to be the children of the first Walkers. Not through power, not through force, but through choice." "I don't understand." The archivist paused at the doorway. Its voice was almost a whisper now. "The first Walkers were not great because of their technology. They were great because of their wisdom. They could have ruled the galaxy as tyrants. They could have enslaved every species they created. Instead, they chose to nurture, to guide, to protect. And when their time was done, they chose to step aside and let the young inherit the stars." The silver light flickered one last time. "Show the Dominion what kind of children you are. Commander Cole, show them that you have inherited not just the power of the first Walkers, but their wisdom, their compassion, their mercy. That is the proof they cannot deny." And then Lumineth was gone, leaving Marcus alone with his thoughts and the weight of an entire species on his shoulders. He looked at the mark on his chest. He thought about the fleet coming to destroy his world. He thought about the delegates who would vote on humanity's future. And slowly, carefully, a plan began to form in his mind. Not a plan of war, not a plan of threats, but a plan that might just save his people, if he had the courage to see it through. 3 days passed. 3 days of waiting. 3 days of silence from the Dominion leadership. 3 days of messages from Earth, each one more desperate than the last. The United Earth Council wanted answers. They wanted to know if the fleet had been recalled. They wanted to know if humanity would survive. They wanted Marcus to fix everything, to save everyone, to work a miracle that would make the nightmare go away. Marcus had no miracle to offer. He had only himself, a mark on his chest, and a plan that might not work. On the 4th day, The Arbiter summoned him back to the convergence chamber. The walk through the station corridors was different this time. The four beings had stared at him with contempt. Now they stared with confusion, with curiosity, with something that might have been hope. Word of his revelation had spread. Everyone knew about the human who bore the mark of the first walkers. Everyone had an opinion about what it meant. Some thought he was a fraud. Some thought he was a prophet. Some thought he was the beginning of a new age. And some thought he was the end of everything they knew. Marcus ignored them all. He had work to do. The convergence chamber was fuller than before. Word had spread to distant systems, and delegates had come from the far edges of the Dominion to witness what would happen next. Marcus estimated 50,000 beings now filled the tiers of seats. 50,000 witnesses to humanity's judgment. The Arbiter sat on its throne, looking older and more tired than it had 3 days ago. When Marcus approached the central platform, it raised one limb for silence. "Commander Cole," the Arbiter said, "the Dominion has deliberated. We have examined your evidence. We have consulted our archives. We have debated the meaning of the Covenant and the implications of your claim." Marcus stood straight and still. His heart pounded, but his face showed nothing. "The vote was close," the Arbiter continued. 26 species voted to accept your claim and recall the fleet. 21 species voted to reject your claim and continue the extermination. 26 to 21. A majority. Marcus felt hope surge in his chest. "However," the Arbiter said, and the hope died, "the Dominion Charter requires a 2/3 majority to recall a cleansing fleet once it has been dispatched. You have not achieved that threshold. The fleet will continue to Earth." Shouts erupted from the chamber. Some were angry. Some were triumphant. The Moravi delegation began vibrating so loudly that other species had to cover their hearing organs. Marcus did not shout. He did not protest. He simply waited for the noise to fade. "Hi, Arbiter," he said when silence returned. "May I speak?" The Arbiter's compound eyes studied him carefully. "You may. You have voted to destroy my people. In 54 days, your ships will reach Earth. They will burn our cities. They will poison our oceans. They will hunt down every man, woman, and child until none remain. 8 billion lives will end because 21 species were too afraid to believe the truth." He paused, letting the words sink in. "I could stop you." The chamber went still. Every being leaned forward. Every eye focused on the small human standing at the center of the platform. The memory locks are opening faster now. Each day, I remember more of what the first walkers knew. Their science, their technology, their weapons. Marcus raised his hand, and light gathered around his fingers, bright and golden and impossible. "This is just a fraction of what I now command. A simple demonstration of power that your best scientists could not replicate in 1,000 years." The light grew brighter. It spread outward from his hand, filling the chamber with warmth and beauty. Beings who had lived in darkness for generations saw colors they had never imagined. Beings who had spent their lives studying physics watched laws they thought fundamental bend and break. "I could destroy your fleet with a thought," Marcus said. His voice was calm, almost gentle. "I could burn it out of space before it came within 1,000,000 kilometers of Earth. I could do the same to your stations, your planets, your entire Dominion. The power of the first walkers created this galaxy. That same power could uncreate it." He closed his hand. The light vanished. The chamber felt dark for a moment, and when the normal lighting returned, every being was shaking. "But I will not do these things." The Arbiter's mandibles clicked in confusion. "You will not?" "No," Marcus lowered his hand. "Because destroying you is not what the first walkers would have done. It is not what we want to do. It is not who we are." He began to walk again, circling the platform, meeting the eyes of as many delegates as he could. You think of us as violent. You think of us as dangerous. And yes, we have been those things. We have fought wars. We have caused suffering. We have made terrible mistakes. But we have also learned from those mistakes. We have grown. We have changed. And we are still changing, still growing, still becoming better than we were. He stopped and faced the Kreth delegate who had called him a liar. Your species burned 3 worlds before you found peace. Did the galaxy destroy you? No, it gave you time to learn. It gave you the chance to become what you are now. Builders of the greatest ships ever seen. Protectors of trade routes. Guardians of the spaceways. He turned to a delegation of small, furry beings whose name he did not know. Your species nearly destroyed itself in a nuclear war 500,000 years ago. Did the galaxy exterminate you? No, it waited. It watched. And now your philosophers are considered the wisest in the Dominion. Your poetry is studied in every corner of the known stars. He faced the chamber as a whole. Every species here has a dark past. Every species here has caused suffering and death. But you were given the chance to grow beyond your worst moments. You were given time. You were given mercy. His voice hardened. We are asking for the same chance. Nothing more. Nothing less. The chance to prove what we can become. The Arbiter spoke, its voice uncertain. And if we refuse? If the fleet continues to Earth? Marcus smiled. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of a man who held unimaginable power and chose not to use it. "Then I will not stop it," he said. Gasps echoed through the chamber. "If you choose to destroy us, we will not destroy you in return. We will not use the power of the first walkers to wage war. We will face your fleet with what weapons we have built ourselves, and we will probably lose. Billions of humans will die. Our cities will burn. Our civilization will end." He paused. "And then you will have to live with what you have done." The words hung in the air like a judgment. "You will have to explain to your children why you broke the covenant. You will have to teach them that the galaxy is ruled by fear, not by wisdom. You will have to look at the ruins of Earth and know that you destroyed the inheritors of those who created you. And when the last human is gone, you will have to face the silence where our voice used to be." Marcus touched the mark on his chest. "The first walkers gave you life. They gave you the stars. They gave you everything you have. And now their children stand before you, asking for mercy. Not demanding it. Not threatening you for it. Simply asking, as one civilization to another, as one family to another, for the chance to live." He lowered his hand. "The choice is yours. I have said everything I came to say. I will return to my quarters and wait for your decision. Whatever you decide, know that we will accept it. We will not fight. We will not rage. We will face our fate with the dignity of our ancestors." He turned and began to walk toward the exit. "Wait." The Arbiter called. Marcus stopped but did not turn around. "Why?" The Arbiter asked. "You have the power to save your people. Why would you choose not to use it?" Marcus was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was soft. "Because if we save ourselves through destruction, we are not worthy of being saved. Because if we become the monsters you fear, then you were right to fear us. Because the first walkers did not build this galaxy by crushing their enemies. They built it by showing them a better way." He looked over his shoulder at the Arbiter. "If humanity is to inherit the legacy of the first walkers, we must inherit their wisdom, not just their power. And sometimes wisdom means trusting others to make the right choice, even when you cannot force them to." He walked out of the chamber, leaving 50,000 beings in silence behind him. Marcus sat in his quarters and waited. He did not eat. He did not sleep. He simply sat on his bed, staring at the wall, and waited for the galaxy to decide if his species would live or die. The hours passed slowly. Messages came from Earth, but he did not answer them. What could he say? That he had gambled everything on the hope that beings who had voted to destroy humanity would change their minds? That he had revealed unimaginable power and then chosen not to use it? That the fate of 8 billion people now rested on a single question. Were the species of the Dominion capable of mercy? He did not know the answer. No one did. The Dominion had not faced a choice like this in a billion years. The old rules, the old calculations, the old certainties did not apply. Everything depended on what was in the hearts of 50,000 delegates who had spent their lives believing they were the masters of the galaxy. On the 7th day, the chime sounded at his door. Marcus stood. His legs were weak. His hands trembled. But his voice was steady when he spoke. Enter. The door slid open, and the High Arbiter stepped inside. The ancient Vethkai looked different than before. The pride was gone from its posture. The certainty was gone from its eyes. It moved like a being who had seen something that shattered everything it believed. Commander Cole, the Arbiter said. May I sit? Marcus gestured to the floor. There were no chairs for a being of the Arbiter's size. The Arbiter lowered itself slowly, its old joints creaking. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. I have lived for 3,000 years, the Arbiter finally said. I have served the Dominion for half that time. I have made decisions that affected billions of lives. I have sent fleets to war. I have signed treaties that ended wars. I have done things I am proud of, and things I am ashamed of. It looked at Marcus with eyes that held something new, something soft, something almost human. In all that time, I have never seen what I saw in that chamber. I have never witnessed a being with the power to destroy everything choose not to. I have never heard someone speak of mercy when they had every right to speak of vengeance. Marcus said nothing. He waited. When you left, the Arbiter continued, the chamber erupted. Species that have not spoken to each other in centuries began to debate. All eyes turned against each other. Enemies found common ground. Everything we thought we knew about power and politics was turned upside down. The Arbiter's mandibles clicked softly. The Kreth delegate, the one who called you a liar, was the first to change his vote. He said that any species willing to die rather than become destroyers deserved to live. The Moravi followed. Then the smaller species, the ones who have always lived in fear of the great powers. One by one, they stood and declared their support for humanity. Marcus felt tears forming in his eyes. He blinked them back. The final vote was 42-5, the Arbiter said. The fleet has been recalled. The extermination order has been cancelled. Humanity will be permitted to take its place among the stars. The words hit Marcus like a physical force. He sat down heavily on his bed, unable to stand. 8 billion lives. Saved. His gamble had worked. His people would survive. That is not all, the Arbiter said. The Dominion has voted to offer humanity full membership in our alliance. Not as a junior partner. Not as a probationary member. As an equal. As the inheritors of the first walkers. As the voice of those who created us all. Marcus looked up at the Arbiter, unable to speak. You asked us to give you time, the Arbiter said. You asked us to let you prove what you could become. We have decided to do more than that. We have decided to help you, to guide you, to share our knowledge and our resources as you grow into your inheritance. The Ancient being leaned forward. You showed us something today, Commander. You showed us that power without wisdom is nothing. You showed us that the true measure of a species is not what it can destroy, but what it chooses to protect. You showed us what the first walkers saw in you when they chose to become you. The Arbiter rose slowly, painfully, to its full height. I am old. I will not live to see what humanity becomes. But I will die knowing that I helped to save something worth saving. That is more than I ever expected from my final years." It moved toward the door, then stopped. "There is one more thing. The 5 species who voted against you have requested a meeting. They wish to apologize. They wish to explain their fears and hear your response. Will you speak with them?" Marcus stood. He wiped his eyes. He took a deep breath. "Yes," he said. "I will speak with anyone who is willing to listen." The Arbiter's antennae lifted in what might have been a smile. "That is why you won, Commander. That is why you will always win. Because you never stop trying to reach those who stand against you. Because you believe that every mind can be changed, every heart can be opened, every enemy can become a friend." It stepped through the door. "The first walkers chose well when they chose to become you. The galaxy is lucky to have you." And then it was gone. Marcus stood alone in his quarters, the weight of an entire species lifted from his shoulders. He looked at the mark on his chest, the symbol that had turned fear into worship, the sign of an inheritance he was only beginning to understand. He thought about what Lumineth had told him, about showing the Dominion what kind of children humanity was, about proving that they had inherited not just power, but wisdom, about mercy. He had done it, not through force, not through threats, but through trust, through hope, through the belief that even the most frightened beings could find the courage to do what was right. A message chimed on his communication device. It was from Earth, from the United Earth Council, from 8 billion people who were just learning that they would live. Marcus read the message. It was short, simple, beautiful. "You saved us. Now come home and help us become what we were meant to be." He smiled. He picked up his jacket. He walked out of his quarters and toward the docking bay where his small, old weaponless ship waited. The journey home would take weeks. During that time, more memories would unlock. More knowledge would unfold. He would become more than he was now. Step by step, piece by piece, the inheritance of the first walkers slowly awakening within him. But he was not afraid. He knew now what humanity was capable of. He knew what kind of children they were. And he knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them with the same courage and wisdom they had shown today. The galaxy was vast. The future was uncertain. And humanity was just beginning to understand its place among the stars. But one thing was clear. They were not alone anymore. They had never been alone. They were the children of the first walkers, the inheritors of the greatest civilization that had ever existed, the keepers of a legacy that spanned billions of years, and they would make their ancestors proud. Marcus walked onto his ship, closed the airlock behind him, and set course for Earth. Behind him, 50,000 beings watched him go, some with hope, some with wonder, some with the beginnings of love. And somewhere, in the deep places of the galaxy, where ancient machines still remembered their makers, something stirred, something smiled, something whispered words that no living being could hear. "Welcome back, children. We have missed you." The stars burned bright. The ship flew home, and humanity stepped forward into a future brighter than anything they had ever imagined.